Thanks for coming. My name is Hui Su from WeChat AI Tencent. Our work is about select and tend towards controllable content selection in text generation. Now, many text generation tasks naturally contain two steps: content selection and surface realization. For example, in data-to-text task, the fields in blue are the selected parts which reflects what to say. Then the final text on the right reflects how to say this content. The same generation step can also be found in summarization task. For the methods, traditional methods have a pipeline structure, interpretable but highly task-dependent, and rely on heuristic rules. Recent neural network models handle this task with the sequence model. It performs the two steps in a black box way, which is untrainable but lacks controllability and interpretability. To address this concern, we propose decoupling content selection from the sequence framework to allow more control over the generation by introducing an extra content selector. The content selector selects only part words of the source. Others are prohibited. Afterwards, the decoder generates based on the selected source. We give an example here. The task is a news headline generation. We can generate text describing various contents by sampling different content selections. So if the chosen words are Sri Lankan closure schools, the generation text will be Sri Lanka closest schools. If we select one more word, Wednesday, it can generate Sri Lanka closest schools on Wednesday. Here we introduce the notation of this problem. X and Y denote source and target pair. Then we formalize content selection as a sequence labeling task. Beta I denotes a binary selection mask. Beta I equals to 1 if the corresponding xi is selected, and 0 otherwise. Beta I is assumed to be sampled from a Bernoulli distribution, and gamma is the Bernoulli parameter. Texts are generated by sample a sequence of binary masks, beta to decide which content to cover. Then we decode with the condition distribution p theta y given x and beta, which is an RN decoder with attention. The objective is maximizing the log likelihood of p theta y given x, which is equal to maximizing the marginal likelihood of beta. This figure shows the generation process model where select contents first, then decode the text with the selected contents. Source text pairs are available for training, but the ground truth content selection for each pair is unknown, which is to say the selection mask is not known. Since computing the exact marginal likelihood requires enumerating over all possible combinations of beta, and the exact computation requires exponential time, so we consider 3 strategies. The strategy 1 is called a soft select. We do the first order Taylor series approximation of the marginal likelihood of beta, which equals to likelihood of y given x and gamma. A soft select is efficient and fully differentiable and reducing the complexity to constant time. However, the gap of the soft approximation is unbounded. It may lead to unrealistic generation in the testing stage. The second strategy is called reinforced select, which uses reinforcement learning to approximate the marginal likelihood. Specifically, it is trained to maximize a lower bound of the likelihood by applying the Jensen inequality. Reinforced select just treat Bernoulli distribution as a policy. Reinforced is unbiased and it has a strict lower bound and ensure constant optimization, but has a high variance. So we move to strategy 3. The third strategy we consider is to apply this variational inference objective to our problem. Basically, we impose a posterior Q5 to approximate the posterior of latent variable beta. Then the likelihood is estimated by important sampling over the proposal Q5. It has a tight bound than soft select and a lower variance than reinforced select. In practice, the soft select and reinforced select model tends to always selecting all source words. It is easy to understand. The model keeping all words is more safe and easy to generate the text. So we regularize the selection ratio for them. Alpha is the target selection ratio. Gamma is the mean value of the Boolean parameter gamma. And this forces the selector to select the most important alpha tokens for each source instead of keeping all of them. For the variational reinforced selection, selecting all words corresponding to the posterior collapse problem, which is also called KR annealing. It is a frequently happen problem in VAE NLP problem. So we reserve some space epsilon to the KR term, which is a common method for elevating posterior collapse problem. It is well known lower epsilon tax maximum likelihood, so lower epsilon prefers generation. Higher epsilon tax higher mutual information, so higher epsilon prefers controlling. In this task, it is reflect on the recall and the precision of the content selector. A higher recall prefers generation, where a higher precision prefers controlling. As for the comparison, the baseline we consider is the bottom-up method, which is proposed last year. It trains the content selector with pseudo labels, then use it to mask the attention score of a separate trained sequence-to-sequence model. So easy to train. Bottom-up generation has the following two problems. Content selector and the sequence-to-sequence are separately trained and might not be adapted to each other, where second, pseudo labels may not be perfect. So for the experiments, we focus on comparing the bottom-up generation, which is short for bottom-up. The second is soft select. The third is reinforced select and variational reinforced select. We evaluated these 3 points in order: diversity of the content selection, controllability of content selection, and quality of generation. We randomly sample 50 selection masks from the trained selection distribution, then decode text greedily for each selection mask. For a good model, we think it should meet these 3 conditions. The first, the decoded text should be similar to human reference, also refers to quality. Second is selection masks should be diverse. Third, different selection masks should lead to different decoded text. We report Rouge score for generation quality and the entropy of the selector, proportion of unique selection, the ratio of unique generation and mask for measuring diversity. We give a short summary here. For bottom-up and soft select, the selection is diverse. And selection has strong effects on text generation, but with poor generation quality. For reinforced select, selection is not diverse, has little effects on the text generation. For variational reinforced select, it has diverse selection, has strong effect on text generation, and with good generation quality. As for the controllability, we measure it based on the self-blue metric. The self-blue metric evaluates the intra-selection similarity of the generated task. The result shows variational rainfall selector achieves the highest controllability of content selection. We further measure the metrics scores on these two data sets by decoding text from the best selection mask. The results shows that variational rainfall select significantly outperforms the other, and a larger epsilon leads to more controllable selector with a bit degree of performance. We can see as epsilon increases, the performance decreases gradually, but the content selection gains more diversity and controllability. In practice, we can turn this value to achieve a trade-off. Finally, I will give a conclusion of our work. Our work improves controllability and interpretability in neural text summarization by treating content selection as latent variable. We apply the amortized variational inference to content selection for a tighter bound and a lower variance. A trade-off between the generation and the controllability can be easily adjusted by turning epsilon. Thank you.
Thanks. We have plenty of time for questions. So I have a question about the controllability. So I'm slightly confused about what do you mean. Can you give a concrete example on what do you mean the controllability of the content selection?
Okay. In our training process, we didn't label any content selection. But when the training is finished, you can choose the words you need to generate. So it's called controllability. In the testing time, you can, for example, in my in this example, you can select different words. If we add something like a Wednesday, we need to generate on Wednesday. If you select a military campaign, we need to generate a war. This is called contributive. Yeah.
Yes, I think this is very good work, and but some details I'm not very sure about the experiment. You have said that for the extraction, you choose the parameter lambda. I remember, and then it comes to 52. Last slides. Yeah.
Okay.
Not that one for the table. And you say on the left, you say that is the quality of the extraction, and along the right, that is the generation, and you and don't know what's the metrics of that result. On that side, I'm not sure. That's the question was how to evaluate the extraction. Use the Roche, the Roche or
root. Yeah.
Yeah, this slide.
Yeah.
For example, on the left, you mean the best selection result,
yeah.
and you on the it's 56. You mean
50.
On the last line of the result?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. For this slide and the previous one, and you also said and the previous one, and the previous this slides, and you also said this. The multiple content selection, on the left side, it is selection, right? And right is for generation. So this kind, I don't know, how do you take the evaluation of that?
Okay, thank you. We want to measure the generation quality and contributivity the diversity. So for the quality, root score is the most used for generation quality. So in left, the root score is used for generation quality, and the next slide, and here, the best select generation, we use the root score for generation. When generation, we didn't do any constraint. We just tuned the best parameter for every model to see whether the generation result is how the generation result is. So, so in this part, when using root, it has nothing to do with the controllability or the diversity. Thank you.
Chen.
Hi, hello, and quite interesting work. And I remember you use a method to control the percentage of the source articles when you work to select the content. But I want to know during your evaluation and how many percentage your model will select all source article to generate the results.
Oh, a good question. Especially for the variation or reinforced select model, if we didn't do the regularization, it will choose all the source words, which means if you are familiar with the variation encoder, in the training part, the latent variable it means it doesn't work. The decoder used all the source, which means the latent variable has nothing to do with the decoder. Yeah, and for the reinforced part, if it nearly it also has this question, this problem. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the discussion, and let's thank our speaker again.